Hello everyone, welcome to Code with Femi. I hope you guys are doing well. In our last video, we actually looked at structure and configuration for ASP.NET Core MVC 5.0. In this actual video, we're going to be looking at middleware. What is a middleware? A middleware is actually a component that is implemented within your app pipeline, your MVC app pipeline, to handle requests and responses. And this is actually something that really helps in terms of when you have like core things that are related to your actual MVC application. And one of them is, for instance, authentication or routing or exception or authorization. So those things are actually quite crucial to your actual application, and middleware actually helps you to be able to handle those those different components or mechanism. And I'm just going to paint a picture here so you can actually have a sense of what I'm talking about. So let's say that you have a user, right? The user is actually going to want to use it might want to like send a request to your actual application. Let's say they go on the browser and they actually come and say, oh, I just want to visit Code with Femi, femi.com, right? I think some people like www. Okay, let's just put that there. So this is actually an HTTP request. Okay, and for those of us who don't know what HTTP means, let's just go quickly and say what is HTTP, because that is actually also crucial to to this actual information. So let's actually go there and let's see what that means. So you can see here, HTTP is a protocol for fetching resources such as HTML documents. So you see this page we're looking at, it is through HTTP protocol I've been able to to get it, because I'm using this actual URL here to send a request to wherever they are hosting this actual HTML page, and the actual server will give me back this page. So that is and this is actually happening through HTTP. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Okay, so actually just bear that in mind, and you can see the nice beautiful diagram they've drawn here, which is really nice, where you put in a URL there, and it actually goes into web servers, video servers, ad servers, and pull all those information for you and create, and boom, you've got your HTML page with all the different things, images, videos, scripts, and all of that. So that is just a quick thing I want to like touch on. You can actually read up on this. I will actually put this in the description below, but the actual focus for this actual episode of MVC crash course is middleware, and let's get back to it. So basically, the person is sending a HTTP request to your MVC app. The first thing it gets to hit is your actual middlewares, and I'm gonna show you that now. But let's just say that you have a middleware, right? You have a they make a request. The first thing that happens is that it goes into your middleware, and we can also see that here. This is actually the Microsoft documentation for middleware, and basically you can also read up on this, but this is where it's quite crucial to really understand, where a user makes a request there, and then it goes through your different built-in middlewares, and then it gets to the custom one that you can actually write, and then it would actually flow to the final one, which is the endpoint one. So we can actually just see how the call goes. So before it actually gets to your actual making sure that it gets the actual page and gives it back to the actual users, it goes through the actual middle. You can see there, it goes through a middleware, and then it actually goes goes to fetch whatever information, fetch the fetch content, and then it actually travels back, into the middleware and back to the user. So this would be the like, let's say this is actually the request scenario, and then let's say that this is actually the the response scenario, where someone actually like goes through the middleware. Just have to delete this because now this has to point to that, and then let's delete that, and this has to go back to the user. Okay, and what does the user see? The user sees HTML, sees the view and some of the documents we have there, like CSS, images, then you have your JavaScript. Okay, so this is actually what the user actually like gets back. But all as they make the request, it goes through the middleware, it fetches the content, goes back in a response. So this is step one. The request is made. Step two, the response is received by the user through the browser. So, and that is what has happened here, where you make a call, and then it goes, the information or whatever data I've requested for. So we can see that. And one thing I just want you to bear in mind is that the actual order of your middleware really matters. You can't just put middlewares everywhere. You have to be very, very careful not to mess up your middleware. You have to make sure that the middlewares are actually like they follow a particular flow. And that is for the built-in ones. The built-in ones have to follow a particular flow, but the actual custom middlewares have to be in between here. You can see they said in between authorization and endpoint. You can see there. So don't get it twisted. It has to be in between these two. So you can have as many middlewares as you want to, and you can also order them in the way you want to order your custom middlewares, the one you wrote. When I say custom, I mean the one you actually wrote by yourself. So just bear that in mind. You can see here you have full control over how to reorder existing middlewares or inject new custom middlewares as necessary for your scenarios. But just make sure that you don't start shuffling middlewares, because, and I'll give you a scenario now, you can't have your actual authentication run after your authorization. It will not work, and this is because your application needs to know who the user is through the authentication middleware before they can actually authorize that user to a certain resources within the MVC application. Excuse me. So just bear that in mind. That is actually very crucial for this. So let's go into the actual code, and you can see where even what built-in middlewares we've got currently. So we've got, you can see here, we've got the use developer exception page middleware. We've got middleware there. There's a lot of middleware there. Use exception handler middleware. We've got use HTTPS redirection. These are all middlewares that we've actually touched on. And also, one thing you should know is that in here, this is where we should be putting our custom middleware. Right there, you can see between authorization and endpoints. You can see use endpoints. Let's just go back to this, and you would see right there. You can see authorization, endpoint. You put in your custom middlewares. So in there, we have a custom middleware happening here, right? This is where we're gonna put our middleware. But before we do that, what do? We have to create our actual middleware. So how do you do that? You actually create a folder just to make sure that we just put things in structure. Create a actual folder called middleware. In there we have an error handler middleware. Okay, inside of our error handler middleware, right there, you can see it's just a class. So middleware is actually a class. It's not like it's something complicated. It's just simple as this. And first thing you want to do is you want to like set up a request delegate field. We're going to touch on actual delegate later at some point, but for now let's just focus on the middleware. So the request delegate would be we have to resolve that. This is actually coming from this namespace Microsoft ASP.NET Core.http. And then the next thing you want to have is a constructor, and you can actually use this shortcut, which is ctor and then tab. So tab will create the actual constructor for you, so you don't have to type all of this out. It saves you the development time. And then you can just copy that, you can paste that in there, because this would actually have to be injected into this constructor when this middleware is called. And this is part of the dependency injection, but we'll actually discuss dependency injection quite soon, maybe in the next in the next episode. So, and then we can just initialize that actual field, so it gets resolved at runtime, and then we pass it to the actual private field there. And bear in mind, the underscore actually makes you know that this is actually a private field. And then we have our actual parameters, method parameters in camel case. So just bear that in mind in terms of the naming convention. That is really crucial. And then the next thing you would want to have is an asynchronous task method, which we call invoke. Okay, inside of invoke, we're passing in an HTTP context. Okay, and then in there we're actually doing a try, and then we're doing a catch. So this actual try, this try catch is actually a global exception handler that we've now put in place to make sure that whenever there's an exception that happens, we can handle it within this central location. We don't have to put try catch everywhere within our code. But bear in mind, there are cases where you still need to put in try catch in some specific places of your code. And the reason why you want to do that is maybe you want to send an email, or you want to log that specific exception, or you still want to carry on with some of the the flow you're busy with in terms of that logic. Maybe that exception is not really something that should stop your application from running. It's just for you to handle it and do some further logic to make sure that your app can continue running. So just bear that in mind. But this is actually a way to set up a global exception handler in MVC. You use a middleware. So this is one of the really good benefit of a middleware. You don't have to go everywhere and be looking for where how you handled an exception. You can actually set it in one place, and Bob's your uncle. So in your try, this is where you actually going to be forwarding the request to the next middleware, because we're not going to be doing anything with the actual request when it comes in. So we just have to await that actual we pass in the actual request to the next middleware by writing it this way. So this is what actually helps to forward, let's just say forward request the next middleware. As you can see, they just forwards it next middleware. And let me show you in the image as well. Let's just scroll to, is it to the bottom or to the top? Let's scroll up. Yeah, this place. You can see when the request comes in, next, you can see next. You do a logic, you pass it to the, after your logic, you pass into the next middleware, and then logic, next, passing like that. And then once it's done, it actually goes back with the response like that. It goes out. So just actually bear that in mind, that this is how the flow actually happens in MVC. So since we're not doing anything with the request, we're just going to pass on the actual context. But if you want to, you might want to just do something in here. This is just an example. It's just bear this in mind. This is just an example. Let's just say you have a request here, then you can have a context, right? Context of request. Like you can see, this is the actual request now. Then you can actually do whatever. Actually say that this is how you want to undo this, this actual information before you forward it to the next middleware. So just bear that in mind. But now what we're talking about is that when this actual request is being forwarded, there might be problems, there might be an exception on the other middlewares that we've called. This is how you now handle it, where you can now say that, okay, this exception, when there's actually this exception, there's an exception. Now this is what I want you to do. Maybe I'm just gonna write some statements here. I'm not gonna code it, I'm just going to write it there so you can see. Just that I'm just provoking your thoughts as to what you can now start doing with your middleware. In here you can actually say log exception. So that's one of the key things you can do here. And another thing you can do here is that you can send an email of the exception to admin. So you can actually have that. You can even can be an an email or SMS depending on the urgency of this actual MVC application. So you can actually have that, and then once you are done, you can now say context dot response. Remember, this is now a response because we're now going back out to actually forward the information back to the user. And now we can now say write asynchronous. In there we can actually have this as a simple message to just say sorry, something went wrong, please try again. So you can see that this is actually the actual response that the user is going to see. This is a friendly message because you don't want to be sending your user the actual bunch of exceptions, the stack trace and all of that, because when you log, you're logging the exception, the full exception, which includes the stack trace of all of the things that is really happening on your application when it crashed. So, and those things you want to hide from your end users, from the people that are using your actual application, because you don't want them seeing those exceptions, because you never know who they are. Some of them are actually like security hackers, the cyber security hackers. They can actually see, oh, okay, this is actually a vulnerability in your application, and actually exploit it further, and they can actually hack your actual app. So just bear that in mind. The kind of information you providing to your user, if it doesn't add any value to them, there's no point showing it to them. So the actual way is to actually show them friendly messages. If it's a problem with, let's say you have an e-commerce site, there's a problem in maybe the cart is having a problem, you can just say, oops, sorry, the cart is having a problem now, please try again later, or contact administrator. Simple, friendly message. Just bear that in mind. And also you will see there's a green indication here. Always pay attention to it because it's telling you something, right? And here you can see it says this is actually an awaitable task. That is what is really telling me that I need to await it. So I can actually just say await here, and that would actually resolve the problem. So now we have a friendly message going out. As part of what we have done, like we should be doing in here, is to log the exception and then send an email if we want to the admin or whoever that is responsible for this app. Okay, we might get to that at a later stage, but for now let's just focus more on the the middleware. I don't want to go deeper into, because these are all different topics. So but let's just go into the middleware. So we have a middleware now. Yay. Now the next question is, so is this usable now, or is it already there now? The thing is, we've written the class, but we have not plugged it into our application. Remember what I've just done here is just created a comment here. So in there, this is where we now plug this actual middleware into our startup class, because remember, startup class is actually where we set up our configuration of on our app should actually run. So you will say app, and then we say use middleware, and then you open up a bracket because this takes in that type. So we can now say error handler middleware. Okay, and then what we can now do is, because now you're saying you wanted to use that middleware, right? Click on that, and then you have a middleware plugged into your app now. So for now I'm just going to let it run, and then we'll now carry out some scenarios. So for now let's just let it run. I'm not going to touch anything else in the actual application. I just want it to run basic, so that you can really understand what is going on as to what we've done here. As you can see now there's a breakpoint here, right? And see, this is our middleware, it's been hit, right? And then we can step in, but once I step over, you will see it's just gonna forward the request to the next middleware, and then you will see you should actually see the actual page now coming up, like presenting itself. Was that an exception? Oh, there is an exception. Ooh. Oh, I see. it says that the following sections have been defined but have not been rendered by the page at. That's interesting. Let's expand this. I don't want to read that clearly. To ignore an unrendered section called ignore section. I think this is what we've done in our previous video actually. Yeah, you can see this is actually, there's already an exception and you can see it's actually working for us. This is the middleware intercepting that call. So instead of it actually showing that nasty, that unclear message that would be unclear to the users, because okay, let's just do this fully. Let's see if I can send back ex.message without restarting this. Let's see if this works. I just want to see if I can use the auto reload. No, I have to stop. There are cases where it doesn't really work in some scenarios, but let's run the app again so you can see what I mean. This is quite interesting. So we're gonna see what happens now, since because we've now changed that actual message now to something else. It's no longer the normal one that we've passed in, which is a friendly message. Now we want to like send them the actual exception.message just for them to for you to see what it looks like on their side. Just gonna wait for it. Okay, the breakpoint is 8, and then let's just step through it again and see what happens. Might be an error again, obviously, because we haven't fixed the problem yet. Okay, so we have this exception, right? And that message should be going out now to the users. So you can see here, the following section have been defined but have not been rendered by the page. Code refer me to ignore an unrendered section. Call ignore section. So you can see, but this doesn't really make any sense to your users. I'm sure you agree with me, right? And you shouldn't be showing them this. So we need to fix this. But before we do that, but you can really get the message of what I'm trying to explain here, where you don't have to show that to them. You can just tell them that. But that message we just showed on the actual browser now would have been logged and would have been sent to an admin. They would have seen, oh wow, there's a problem here, and then they would actually just call you, who is the actual software engineer, to go fix it. Like, look, this is the actual error message we're getting. Like, can you go look into the actual app and see where the problem is? So I remember that we actually put in a section here where we put it at the bottom. Then we might just have to maybe remove it or something. Let me just see. Let's just do a wild search. Let's see if we can find it through let's do a wild search. This is another way of actually, if you want to find something within your application and you don't really necessarily want to open up the your class file, you can just use Ctrl+Shift+F, and then that would actually like take you to it will give you like the results, and you can click on the actual one, and you can see here there's actually a section that I've actually like specified here, but I've not defined it within the actual layout class layout page, razor page. So I can take this out and save it, and then let's run this again and see what happens. Okay, the breakpoint is 8 again, and then here we can see that at this point I'm expecting it not to try any exception anymore. It should just pass. You can see it has forwarded that request, and then it has gone to the page without worries. You can see, so we've got a page here now. We've got a proper page and everything is actually happy. So it's actually just a scenario where you want to ensure that you have a global place where you're handling your exception. And also you can also even do more stuff here, where you can have a custom exception. You can create a new class and inherit it from this exception class, and that would be like a custom exception within your actual application. And then you can actually do a check here to say, if it's this specific exception, then send maybe a status code of 400 and which is bad request, and then give it this message. You can actually do a lot of things. I want you guys to play around with middlewares, like different middlewares. Go, go do research, find out, okay, what other middleware can I have? Let's have a chat around it. Comment on the chat. Let me know what middlewares you've come up with. Now you know how to do it. You just have to create a middleware that looks like this, and then it's basic. It's actually straight to the point, and I've made it as simple as possible so that you don't have to always remember a lot of things. It's as simple as this. You have a constructor and you have a method that has a try catch, and the try catch has a exception that you can log. You can send an email, and also you can actually change whatever messages you want to send back to your users. And in your startup class, you can see I've registered it. That is all we did, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll catch you in the next video, and the next video is going to be on, let's go there, drum roll, dependency injection. So keep well. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and yeah, stay well.